Hey everyone, you guys have been seeing me make a lot of sourdough, so I thought this was the perfect time to show you guys how to do it in this little vlog. I wanted to keep it vloggy and not just like one main video, so hope you're enjoying. But I wanted to show you guys how to make sourdough starter. It's so easy. I'm going to leave a link below as well if you want to go over this method, but I'm going to explain it really easily to you guys right now as well. So right here I have my jar. So you'll just need any sort of wide mouth jar. You can use a mason jar, you could use like anything, as long as it's got a big mouth, not this, but one of these would work, that you can scrape down the sides and really get in there, then it will work. So I just use one of these, but I just don't shut it, and you'll see why in a second. I'll explain that. So I use like an old honey jar from the farmer's market, and this is my sourdough jar. Everybody does theirs a little bit differently. I like to keep my sourdough starter really clean. By that I mean every single time you feed this thing, you're going to have to scrape down the sides, and a spatula is vital, because if you use a spoon, it's just going to get really messy and it gets like really cakey and it builds on top of each other. So I highly suggest a spatula, a wide mouth jar, just a spoon for stirring that you'll get a new one every time, a measuring glass to measure your water, and some flour. So I use all-purpose unbleached flour for mine. You can use anything. When you start to mix up your flours and use things besides wheat, you get different results, obviously, so you can really play around. But I'm modeling an unbleached wheat sourdough for you guys. So as you can see, mine is quite big. I've got lots of sourdough here because I'm about to make a sourdough loaf, and I'm going to walk you guys through that process as well for day 1, and then you guys can check back in for day 2 and I'll show you how I bake it. It doesn't matter that I have so much sourdough starter in here, because you make it the same way you feed it every single time. So as you feed it, if you don't discard the stuff that you're not using, you'll just get more and more sourdough, right? So it will work just the same. Even if your jar is empty and you follow these steps, you will still get a sourdough starter and it will be fine. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to mix my sourdough first. And again, if you're starting with a jar, you don't have to do this, but this is important for when you feed it after you've started your first batch. So once you have sourdough in the jar, you're going to want to stir it down really well before you feed it. With your empty jar, if you're just starting out, you would pour 1/4 cup water. That's it. It's better to use filtered water. I ran out of my jug water. I have to go buy some, so I'm using tap in a pinch, but try and use filtered water. It just is better. And I like to add my water first. So 1/4 cup water goes in, and you can stir that down if you want. I don't. And then you're going to take a tablespoon and add 6 tablespoons of flour. 6, okay. And now you just stir that in. It's okay if there's lumps, there's going to be. They will dissolve, because basically what you're doing is you're growing good bacteria, and that bacteria will basically break down the lumps that are in there anyway. So again, my jar is super full. The reason I didn't discard any is because I'm making bread. So I'm going to do that now. I'm going to pour a cup of sourdough starter into my bowl that will make bread with later, and I'll show you after we're done this. So I eyeball it. You should probably measure it unless you really trust your eyeballs, but I've never had bread go bad. I'm really good at eyeballing things, so I'm gonna pour out 1 cup of this into my bowl. I still have, I don't know if you can see the line, I still have half sourdough starter, but it's fed now, so I won't feed it again until tonight. I'll talk about the bread in a second, but this is what it looks like when you feed your sourdough. This gets messy, so I like to keep my sourdough jar pretty clean, because this just turns into like plaster. It just gets so built up, so you really want to make sure that you've cleaned off your area. Don't worry, I'm not done explaining this to you guys. I know it's a little backwards to show you me using the active starter, but I think it's good for you to see what it will look like when you have an established starter and how you use it, what you discard, because sometimes you can read things and you're like, am I supposed to do it a certain way? It's super easy, it's super simple, you don't have to overcomplicate anything. So if you're just starting your first sourdough, then you will have 1/4 cup water and 6 tablespoons of flour in your jar for the first time. You're gonna stir that down. And now that you've seen me stir it down, I've got all of this. Hold on, I'm gonna put my spoon in the sink and rinse it immediately because again, it turns to like glue. Once you've mixed it, you will have sourdough, discard, starter, all over the sides. So what I do is I just really tightly take my spatula and I slide it down the edges and I just push it right down in to where the sourdough starter is. And I just clean up my sides really well, because if you don't, that's when you can get harmful bacteria, because all of that sourdough starch is just gonna sit on the sides, it's gonna build up, it's gonna get really messy and gunky and crusty. I know that sounds disgusting, it's because it is. You don't want that happening because you don't want mold or any bad bacteria growing on the sides. You want this to be a little home of great, wonderful bacteria. Like, it doesn't smell bad, it smells the same as it did before when we started getting cultures in here. So here is the sourdough. You can see the line and you can actually kind of see through the jar now. So there is the lovely sourdough. Now here is something that's very important. You're never gonna just put a lid over top of it and seal it off so no air gets to it. It's incredibly important to let air in and gases out. So the simplest thing I do is I use a piece of paper towel and a hair elastic. You can use a dishcloth that's dry and clean, or a dish towel. You can use cheesecloth, anything that will let air pass through it. So I pop my paper towel on, stick my elastic around it, and there, we're done. We're done feeding it. I set it on my counter, not in the sun, not necessarily in the shade. I just keep it beside my stove, somewhere kind of warm, and you don't worry about it. So here's some rundown on sourdough. It seems really daunting to feed a sourdough starter every 12 hours. You need to feed your starter every 12 hours while it's established. So if you have just made a starter today, or you're going to make a starter, then you've put 1/4 cup of water in your jar, you've mixed it in with your 6 tablespoons of flour, you've mixed that down, you've scraped your sides, you've got your paper towel and your hair elastic going, and now what? The thing is, it seems daunting to feed it every 12 hours, but it's really easy. I just set an alarm on my phone. So I've picked 2 times that work for me. And once you get in the habit of it, you can snooze your alarm and probably remember to feed it before you go to bed anyway. So I feed it in the morning at coffee time because I've worked that into my coffee ritual. So it's just part of my routine that during the coffee breakfast period, I feed my sourdough starter. So I have an alarm for 8:30 because that's usually right after I've made breakfast for all the kids and I'm cleaning up the kitchen and everything. And that way, I usually do it before then, but that way if I've forgotten, then I should be still in the house and I should be able to feed it. And then I also just did 12 hours and I did 8:30 at night. Because I'm almost always home at 8:30 at night. And if not, it works because if I'm going out that night, I can feed it before I go out, or I can feed it when I get home and it's not, like, you can stretch it a couple hours, just don't forget to feed it entirely. If you do, it's not the worst thing in the world. Everybody has forgotten to feed their sourdough once, just feed it as soon as you remember. So if this is your first time making sourdough starter, then you need to make sure you are feeding it every 12 hours until you have fed it about 14 times. It will not be ready to make bread until you have fed it about 14 times. So you're going to discard what you're not using. And so that means I will probably discard tonight, or I might bake something, I'm not sure. I'm getting ahead of myself though. So when you're just doing sourdough and it's not mature enough to make bread, you haven't fed it 14 times yet, you're not gonna get good bread. Don't even try. Don't try and make bread out of it. So you will still discard though. Before you feed it, you'll stir it down. It's really important to stir it down because you're gonna get a layer of almost like a watery sort of substance that's just all the fermentation happening. And so you really want to stir that in before you discard. It's really important. And then you're gonna take about half, you would just eyeball it. So if I was gonna discard, I'd say, okay, that's about half. So I just hold my finger there, scrape it in, check it until, scrape it into whatever I'm baking or the compost, because it's compostable if you can't decide what you wanna do to it. And then you would go ahead and feed the starter once you've discarded, and scrape your sides down again, and then put your paper towel on. Sorry, my bird is very chatty today. And then pop it to the side until the next feed. So you have two choices here. You can discard every single time that you feed your sourdough. If you only want to work with a little bit, it's okay. You're going to need 1 cup of discard to make sourdough bread at the end, so you're gonna have to let it build a little bit. If you don't want to throw it away, because some of us have a hard time throwing discard away and wasting it. If you want to waste it, it's fine. It's not like throw it in the garbage or throw it in your compost if you have a compost. But if you don't want to waste it and you would like to use it, there are hundreds of delicious sourdough discard recipes out there. I make banana bread, I make pancakes, I make waffles. Sourdough pancakes and waffles are like the go-to discard thing. If you've got kids especially, you gotta make breakfast. It's the easiest thing, especially at night. I like to discard at night, make my batter, and then leave it in the fridge overnight and make pancakes or waffles in the morning. Or you can make delicious treats. There's only a couple left here, but I made this blueberry sourdough discard crumble cake, and it's delicious. I will leave the recipe for this in the description box below. It's so good. It's like a breakfast cake, but it also is kind of like a coffee cake. I've put this into cookies. You can make pitas, you can make flatbreads, you can make pizza dough. I do that every Friday. I'll make sourdough discard pizza dough. It's delicious. I will also leave one of my favorite links below about what to do with sourdough discard. You know what I'm also gonna link? I'm also gonna link my Pinterest board for baking, because I'm constantly posting, or I'm constantly adding sourdough discard recipes because I'm obviously baking a lot of sourdough. So that is how you feed your starter. If I miss something, that's how you create a starter and feed it. There's nothing different in the beginning. You just add 1/4 cup water, 6 tablespoons of flour, and that's how you start it. It's done. You've started a sourdough starter. And then 12 hours from that point, you feed it. 12 hours, feed it. 12 hours, feed it until you fed it 14 times. And then you are ready for bread. Now I'm going to show you how you make sourdough bread and the method that I personally use to make sourdough. At this point in the game, if you have any questions or you feel like I've missed something or I wasn't clear on something, please ask below. I will answer you right away as soon as I can. I'm pretty quick with getting back to comments usually, so just ask below. I am happy to help you. And I'm also going to put that link below so you can read through the instructions as well. All right, you guys, now we're going to make bread. My eye keeps getting caught outside. I've put laundry on the line and it keeps waving in the wind and I keep being like, who's that? It's my laundry. Okay, so you just saw me put the discard in this big old bowl. This is my bread bowl. It's just a really big ceramic bowl that I use for making bread. So I've got approximately 1 cup in there. I eyeball it, which is maybe not the wisest thing, but this is what I do, and it's never messed up my bread before, so you can feel free to measure it. I just personally don't. I just want to share that with you so you know that you don't have to be perfect through the process of sourdough to get really good bread. Now, once you have a mature starter, that's when things get fun. After 14 days, you might find you bake your first loaf as a test and it's still not quite there. I feel like every single sourdough loaf I've ever baked with a starter that's been fed 14 times, it's not quite there. It needs a little bit longer, usually just a couple days more. So this is a established starter. I started this starter about 3 or 4 weeks ago. So it's fully established now. It's not that old, it's just a baby still, but it's making wonderful, amazing, delicious bread. So in this bowl, there's 1 cup of sourdough starter. Now to make bread, really quite easy. 4 cups of flour. Again, I'm using the unbleached all-purpose flour. Here's the thing, if you like professionally make sourdough bread or something, or you've been doing it forever and you do a different method than I do or whatever, please don't come for me. I make sourdough for my family just for fun. We don't take ourselves very seriously over here, so like we don't need to be professionals. This is fine. This tutorial is for the unprofessional professionals. You know, the homemaking, homesteading, likes food individual who's not too fussy, wants something easy but cool. This is for you if that's you. If you're a professional and you're like, this is not right, then I'm sure you have better qualifications than me and you are right, but I'm gonna do it this way. We have our discard. We have our flour. I add 1 teaspoon of salt. It's actually supposed to be like 1.5 teaspoons, but I only use 1 teaspoon because I use Himalayan sea salt. And I don't know about you, but Himalayan sea salt is like saltier than other salt. So I always use a little bit less of the Himalayan stuff than any recipe calls for, because it's just a little much for me. And now we are going to add 1 1/4 cup water. It doesn't have to be warm. We're not working with that kind of yeast, so just water. Here's the fun part. You could use a spoon, but the dough is going to get doughy, so I just use my hands. Please use clean hands. I've washed my hands like 3 times during this video, and I washed my hands before this video, and every time I pause or do something different, I wash my hands. Make sure your nails are clean. If you're going to bake with your hands in the baked goods, just make sure you have clean hands, please, because you. So I just go right in and I start the process of folding in. And when you're working with sourdough, you're not like kneading and like slamming it in like this is Christmas cookies. With sourdough, you're just gonna fold to the middle, rotate the bowl, fold to the middle, and you're just gonna keep doing this like so. It's a little bit sloppy. Reminds you of making mud pies as a child. Sometimes I just like to kind of incorporate it. That's okay too. And you guys can see it's starting to really develop itself. There comes a point where it will stop sticking to your hand for the most part, and it will stick to itself. And it's relatively foolproof. Like if you've made a mistake and you think it's too wet or something later, you can add a little more water, or you can add a little more flour. Or yeah, no, don't add water if you think it's too wet. I meant flour. But the opposite is true. If you think it's way too dry and it doesn't look sticky like this, then you can add a little bit more water. So it's quite sticky. Sourdough starts out as a very, very sticky dough, so you don't want to add more flour when it's like this. Like it is sticking to me, it is sticking to the bowl, it is just a gloopy glob. You just want to make sure you've gotten all the flour incorporated. Okay, so now that it's like this, now we can really start that folding. I'm gonna try and do it this way to show you guys that you kind of just rotate and pull it in, push it in the middle, push it into the center. And you just keep doing that until it's kind of forming one big gloop instead of like flying spaghetti monster, you know what I mean? So again, you're gonna have sourdough starter on your hands, and any big chunks I just take off and put it back in the dough. But then we have a ball that looks like this. It looks ugly, it's very rough, but that's okay. This is step 1. Just leave it and go wash your hands. Okay, so once you've got your gloopy glob, this is where it gets to be slightly time consuming. You need to set aside about an hour for this process because we're gonna start working in 10-minute increments about 6 times. You'll see what I mean in a second. So you're gonna take a dishcloth or a dish towel. Normally I don't use one that's stuck together, but I'm in the middle of washing all my dish towels. So you're gonna dampen it with water. It's not so it's dripping, it just needs to be all damp, not wet, just damp. And then we'll cover the bowl. My damp dishcloth is all damp, and you just pop this over the bowl. Again, this isn't the perfect dishcloth that I would use, so I might go grab a different one after. Or we'll just use one side, that's what we'll do. Okay, we're making it work. And then you're gonna set a timer for 10 minutes. Hey, set a timer for 10 minutes.
All right, 10 minutes, and that's starting now.
And then you'll place it somewhere in your kitchen. I put it on top of my stovetop, and we leave it alone for 10 minutes and go about your business. I'm going to explain to you guys how the next process works. So you want to knead the dough or fold the dough about 5 to 6 times, but we're not gonna count this first time. Right now we're just letting the dough rest, we're letting some gluten form, we're letting it kind of figure out that it needs to be a dough ball, And so we're just gonna leave it rest for 10 minutes and then we're gonna start our folding process. And I'm gonna show you, but I'm probably gonna speed this up to music, and you're going to see me do this every 10 minutes for 5 to 6 times. Whether or not you wanna do it 5 or 6 times is totally up to you. You'll kinda know it's ready, and I'll show you that in a minute, but I'm gonna go ahead. I keep tally on a whiteboard or a chalkboard. I'll usually just put a tick every time I knead it or fold it so that I know how many times I've done it so I don't lose track while I'm bopping around the kitchen and taking care of kids. I'm gonna walk you through the first time we knead it so you guys can see exactly how to do it and how many times you should, basically how many circles you should go around the dough. Again, that might sound confusing. I'll show you guys exactly what I mean so nobody has lost. If you have any questions, now would be the time to put them in the comments below and I will answer anything I might have missed. I'm just gonna go clean this up and then I'll show you how to roll the dough and then we'll speed it up. We'll do that and we're almost done. I'm rereading The Wise Woman Herbal Guide for the Childbearing Year. I haven't read this book in many, many years. It's time to read up again. So it was actually not here. I had lent it out to many people. So I just got it back from the last person I lent it out and now it's my turn to read it. Just a little note, if you are interested in this book, I love this book, obviously. It's a herbalist's perspective of the childbearing year. So as a herbalist, I'm pretty biased in loving this, but I love this even before I really called to my herbalism roots. The year starts 2 months, basically the book starts 2 months prior to conception, and it's about where we are now. So that's why I'm reading it right now. It's been 10 minutes, so we have our damp cloth covering our dough ball. Looks like this, but it's had time to rest. And so now we're going to do our first knead, our first folding of the dough. And we're going to do this 5 to 6 times. Keep track of it just in case you forget, because you don't want to underdo it and you don't want to overdo it. It's really simple. All you're going to do is fold the dough into the center while you rotate your bowl. And you're going to do this until you've done about 4 to 5 circles of rotating the bowl. And that's it. So I'll demonstrate it just in case that sounded confusing. Again, with clean hands, always with clean hands, you just start by taking a side of the dough and pulling it to the middle. We're gonna go this way. Pray. That was about once. And you can see we still have sticky dough, but probably by the end of this, it really won't be that sticky. And for sure by your second one, you'll have a nice looking dough ball forming. Done our first session. It's still sticky, it's still a little gloopy looking, but soon it will look nice and smooth. So again, you put your cloth over top of it, you set a timer for 10 minutes, and you go about your day, and we mark that we've done it once. I do like to go under my dough and kind of scrape out all the leftovers that are stuck to it in a little dough ball. And then I'll just plop it in my center and work it in at this point. Now we're really getting a nice ball formed and it doesn't look so sloppy. So again, covered in 10 minutes. Okay, so now we've kneaded this dough 5 times and it looks like this. and I'm going to cover it up and leave it on the stove for 3 to 6 hours. This is what I meant about the fact that it's a little time consuming, but it's not actually a lot of work. So now we just put it and forget it, and before I go to bed, then we will put it in the fridge, and I'll show you how to prep it and pop it in the fridge, and then you can bake it the next day or the next evening, or even it can even sit in the fridge for like 24 hours. So within the next day or the morning after, then I'll bake it. But so right now it's gonna sit in a warm spot in your house for 3 to 6 hours, and it'll rise and do its thing. So it's 3:30 now. This is a little bit later. I usually make bread around lunch. So this will be ready at 6:30 or 9:30. Probably I'll leave it till 9:30. All right, you guys, I thought it would be a good time, my little helper, to do a quick veggie garden update, and so you guys can see how it has grown while we had all that rain. A lot of things have come up. A lot of things are bigger. It's looking good. If you want to see what it looked like before, then go check a couple vlogs back. It'll be like garden tour or something like that. All right, so we have some carrots coming up that I really need to thin, as you can see, but I'm just gonna let them get like maybe a day or two bigger, and then I'll thin them out. The onions, sorry it's windy. Onions are doing well. The tomatoes are doing well. Garlic. The wildflowers are coming up. The potatoes are just killing it. I have never seen a plant grow as fast as these potatoes have grown. Like, I swear I'd cover them in 4 inches of soil and the next morning the potato shoots would be up. Crazy. So maybe a little bit more dirt in them, and then these guys will be just good to grow. Lots of strawberries. All the beans have come up, so that's the other thing. Everything that I thought didn't germinate and I planted more of, both of them germinated. Like, the other ones germinated late and these ones germinated right away. So I have some plants to get rid of and to give away, not get rid of. I'm gonna give away some. So I've got too many peas, bush beans, zucchini, bush cucumbers, and zucchini. Maybe a pepper, but peppers don't like to be touched. So anyway, I'm gonna try and find somebody with a garden who wants some heirloom veggies this year and give especially zucchini. So I've just been letting them get a little bit bigger, and then tomorrow, I think I want to pull them out and repot them to give them to somebody else. So the peas are coming up. Got all the beans back there. Like this weird grouping of cucumbers. That's didn't germinate and then planted more and then they all germinated. Don't know why. This little cluster's gotta go. This little guy's gotta go. The kale, look how big the kale and the chamomile has gotten.
Yeah, I know, they're so
Look
big.
at that.
Especially
And the lettuce is getting bigger.
These, Mom?
Chamomile. We got dill in the back.
It actually
chives.
looks big. It's good.
It's looking awesome. Hey you guys, it is late at night now. I was doing other things, so now I'm finally getting around to doing the bread. So I'll show you the last little step to prep it. And then tomorrow in the next vlog, I will show you guys how to score it and prep it for baking and how specifically I do the bake. But I'm just going to show you how we prep it and put it in the fridge overnight. The towel is totally dry now. It's been a while. The bread is nice and big, and it's got lots of air pockets in it. So we're just going to knead it one more time or fold it over, but you're going to be really careful because you don't want to deflate all the air in there. It will get a lot smaller because we are going to take a lot of that air out, but you just don't want to pop it, you know? So just really gently come around the bowl. And it's so fluffy and so soft. You just want to give it a little gentle knead. I'm going to take it out of the bowl. I'm just really gently peeling it off the sides. I don't want to like hurt the dough. I don't want to overstretch it. Got our big bloopy bloop. Take some flour, put it on your clean surface. Go ahead and set her upside down. Again, kind of sticky because I was just touching it for too long. It's fine. Now you can just let that rest for a minute. Now, if you have a bread basket, this would be the time to use it. But if you don't, just use the mixing bowl that you've been using this whole time. I don't have a bread basket yet. I don't know if I'm gonna get one. I don't really feel the need to, but we take a clean dish towel. Just as a heads up, when you're baking with the dish towels, make sure you're not using really heavy, strong detergents, no fabric softeners. You don't want that kind of stuff in your food. I would have used the towel I was using on top all day to cover it, this one, but because I had to use such a weird towel, that's not actually a normal flat rectangular towel, I'm grabbing a different one. So place the towel inside the bowl. It doesn't matter, like my bowl's not clean, it's the same bowl. And what you're gonna do is sprinkle flour inside the bowl really heavily on top of the towel. So you got something that looks like this, because you do not want your dough sticking to the towel. Now we're going to roll the dough under, and it's like this tuck. I'm not great at it yet. Sorry, I adjusted the camera. But you're basically just creating tension along the surface to prep and stretch the dough. So you're gonna tuck it under. So you're like putting it away from you, taking your hands and pulling them towards your body. But you want to kind of push down and put some pressure down at the same time, so it doesn't just like slide across. You want there to be some tension. So you kind of tuck it and push and make the dough, you'll see in a second, it'll start to stick kind of to the surface. And you just keep doing that and kind of going around the dough. Okay, there we go. So eventually it'll like catch and it'll start to stick. And you see how there's just tension building across the surface of this dough? That's all you're doing, it's rolling. So roll it, it becomes a bit of a rectangle, you flip it to the other side because you want it to stay round, and just gently but also firmly pull it towards you. I would explain it like inflating a balloon almost. You want it to have that like tension that filling a balloon with air would have, but you don't want it to start ripping. If it tears a little bit, it's not the end of the world or anything. It's not gonna hurt your sourdough, but you just want to create a nice little happy ball that is very smooth and has good tension on the top, because that will help develop a lovely crust. Okay, so I'm gonna call it done there. That's good. So now I have this lovely little dough ball. As you can see, it's got the tension, it's nice and smooth. And we're gonna do, so you know how you're rolling under, so that's the bottom side. We're gonna take our bowl and we're gonna take the dough, we're gonna flip it upside down and put this nice pretty side down into our flour towel. A pinch of flour, and we're just gonna sprinkle it over the top of that. Just so we don't want anything sticking. Now you're done. Now what I do is, you don't want to just lay the towel right on top, because the dough will rise more and you don't want that towel being stuck to the dough. You'll see how nicely it comes off tomorrow when we bake it. So what I do personally is I take this like a Tupperware lid. You could use a pot lid or whatever. This one just sits really nicely right on top. I just set it on, so it's still like letting airflow, but it's not letting fridge stuff in. And I just bring the cloth over top of that container, and there, we're done. And now you just stick it in the fridge overnight. While we're here, I'm gonna do a feed to my sourdough. Again, I'm doing it a little later because I did my original feed much later in the day. So I'll just let you watch me do this really quickly. Stir down, water, 1/4 cup. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Stir that in. Perfect. It's lumpy, but tomorrow these lumps won't be there. My spatula. Push down the sides till it's all nice and clean again. Done. Sourdough fed. I'm gonna leave it. If I wasn't building up the sourdough again, I would have discarded half of that and just put it aside in a bowl for baking, or I would have made pancake mix for the morning, or just thrown it into the compost. Totally up to you. But because I'm okay with letting mine build, I just fed it because I'm okay with more sourdough right now. Once your sourdough ball is in the fridge, you can leave it there overnight, or you can leave it there a little bit longer. So I could either bake this bread tomorrow morning or tomorrow night or the following morning. I've never pushed it any longer than that. I don't really think you should, but it can stay in there for like 24 hours. It's totally fine. It has to at least stay in there overnight, so I would have to at least wait until the morning to bake the bread. And in the next vlog, I will show you guys and teach you how to bake the bread, how to score it, and how I bake it using a Dutch oven, and the method that works for me, and how I store it as well, because I think I store it a little bit differently than other people might, so that we get a slightly less crunchy, softer bread, because my kids don't love the crust to be too hard. So there you go, you guys. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial on how to make sourdough discard and eventually make your own sourdough. It's super easy to just remember how to do it after only a couple of times. It's a skill that is amazing, that can be passed down, and it's just one of those kitchen staples, you know, those homemaking, homesteading staples that I think everybody should at least know how to do. It's just a very handy skill to be able to make your own bread and be able to grow your own yeast. If you have any questions whatsoever, please let me know. I'd be happy to answer them. I'm not an expert. I'm just a lady in her kitchen. You know, I'm a mom feeding my family. I enjoy baking and being more self-sufficient, and this is one of the methods that I choose to use to do so. So I hope you enjoyed. If you're going to try it on your own for the first time and you're going to use this method, let me know how it goes. I want to see your sourdough starters. I want to see your journey. Tell me all about it. If you want to tag me on Instagram, go for it. I hope you found this video helpful and informative and really approachable. I try to film it in a way that was really not like, I know what I'm doing and you don't, because like gardening, baking, there's mistakes to be made. Everybody does it a little bit differently, and that's okay. So I hope you enjoyed. Until next one, stick around and I'll show you guys how to bake it. I post about every other day, so you should see the how to bake the sourdough part on Monday. So until then, we'll see you. I hope you enjoy. Bye-bye.